Welcome to Crossing the Line, a special 12-part series of Kid Sketch focusing on the interesting and culturally diverse San Diego-Tijuana region during the region's designation as the World Design Capital in 2024. Crossing the Line by Kid Sketch introduces kids and adults to the benefits of sketching as a way of seeing, understanding, and appreciating the interesting world all around us. Crossing the Line welcomes a different guest sketcher each time, and today we welcome Javier Gracia, Creative Director and General Contractor of Gracia Design Builders. Javier will tell us about his sketching, his buildings, and his motto that fun moves the project. Welcome, Javier, to Crossing the Line. I'm enamored of your work and especially your use of brick in some of your projects. So could we just start there and you could tell us about the Trinidad Cacho project we're going to sketch today?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, certainly. We always tend to tell a story with our buildings. It's kind of like trying to tell that story of a city that's changing and evolving, and it has to carry its changes throughout time with pride. In this case, the story behind Trinidad was Trinidad is three, so that's why the three units. That we didn't want it to be just one big mass, so we broke it apart, and basically these three brick elements were the habitable spaces of each unit. And then we decided to clad it in brick because we wanted to give it this sense of pertinence, so like for it to be part of the city and to grow with it. And given the heritage of the area of the surroundings, like Tecate, the brick being made locally, we thought that material would be the best use of it. And then I also on the base, it's all concrete and steel. So the reasoning behind it is it doesn't have a lot of windows. It's like very closed off to itself. So the concept of it is in a city full of complicated situations, it still produces this like little safe harbor of like safe haven of where you can still be where you're from, and the steel underneath kind of reflected also the city, the downtown, which is very scruffy, very like oxidated, it tends to age. So that's what we wanted with the concrete and the steel, just like a building that would age in its environment, and it would not be damaged by that aging, it would still stay strong.
You said the brick is made locally. It'd be interesting to hear more about that.
So all the brick that is made for Tijuana in the local area that's not brought from anywhere else, that's made in Baja, is made from a place called Cerro Azul. It's actually a community that is south of Tecate, on the way to Valle Guadalupe. Every single brick was handmade. We brought all of these from Tecate. We met the people in Cerro Azul that were making them. So all these experiences, it brings this beauty to it of given the heritage of the area, of the surroundings, we thought that material would be the best use of it.
And how does sketching impact your work?
The way I like to work in my studio is we're not a big studio, so sometimes we build the model in 3D and then I print it out and then I sketch on it and then I send it back and then those changes start taking shape. So it's really cool because it creates a conversation, I think, through the drawings for us, and it just shows how the building is changing.
Do you have any special tools you like to sketch with, or maybe a favorite paper you like to sketch on?
When you think of my tools, right? Yeah, a pencil is a good one, a pen, but the surface, it doesn't necessarily have to be paper. I'm a general contractor, and what I do is I do design build projects. So most of the time I'm in a job site, and when that happens, the installers and the people that are working out details of waterproofing, they just need more clarification than what we provide in a detail and in the plan. And it's just so nice to be able to pull it out a little piece of cardboard and then just sketch it out and say like, oh, you're supposed to bring it in like this and like that. And it's like, oh, boom, that's it. We just saved an hour of their day because it just happens. And that's like the serendipity of it. I like to say it creates less frustration, the job sites, people sometimes are very edgy. So one of my mottos is like, fun moves us. Like fun actually needs to move us towards the right direction. You can't just be angry all the time. That'll tend to happen. We get drawings that, oh, this detail doesn't work or doesn't apply here. And it's got to be similar, but it doesn't say exactly what you need to change. So we make that a big part of my practice towards the people that I work with. I always try to point in that direction where fun moves us.
Sounds like you use your sketching as a strong communication tool.
The process where you translate language into in a job site or in an actual language. I mean, I grew up speaking Spanish at my household and stuff, and I don't translate to English or I don't translate to another language. What I do is I just think that way in different languages. So when I'm sketching, I think that is language on its own, where it's just familiar with all of them. So that's very interesting because the letters, if you don't add a sound to them, or the drawings, if you don't add a connotation of language to them, like notes on them, they're very self-explanatory in any language. And that's just so cool. Like that's just cool that you can draw something and somebody in China that speaks Chinese will understand your concept and your idea and what you're trying to do. And even like you'll show like material, like there's patterns you follow, right? I mean, I've learned them, but if you just think creatively, when you think of the wood pattern, I mean, in architecture we use them because we've learned them, but you don't necessarily need to learn them like that. You can just think of, oh, what does wood look like, and then you just start finding these details and you draw it up and it'll look like wood or like stone or like gravel or like concrete. Just add these little details. Even in the studio, sometimes just for elevations and stuff, I ask very minor things like, oh, add these little two marks to the glass, like these little like reflection marks, and these kinds of things that are not reflected on plans at all. I add them to drawings, just because it'll just make it easier for a person to understand the drawing if he just sees it and knows that that's glass. He doesn't see a wide rectangle. He just sees a white rectangle with like a sparkly thing, and that means it's glass. You don't have to tell it to a 5-year-old; they'll understand it. So yeah, pretty cool language.
Javier, thank you so much. This has been fascinating talking to you. We're going to sketch your building, and
Okay,
hopefully you'll sketch along with us.
I will. I will try to do my best with some new ideas and not just my pen.
Thanks.
All right, let's start.
Before we start our sketch using this reference photo, I'd like to take a moment and talk about the view that we're looking at. It's in two-point perspective. I think I can more easily explain two-point perspective using this similar view of our building that's a little farther back. We know this building has a flat roof, but as we're looking at it, those aren't flat lines. That's because we're seeing the building in perspective. I've talked in the past about one-point perspective, and the rules are the same in two-point. When we see in perspective, that is, we see in 3D, objects that are closer to us appear larger, and objects that are farther away appear smaller. So in this building, this is the closest corner to us, and it's about this big. The back wall is farther from us, and it's that big, it's smaller. And they're connected by lines like that. All of these diagonal lines, which are parallel in real life, go back to a point so far away they seem to vanish. And indeed, they're called the vanishing point. The vanishing point happens to line up with our eye line, approximately where sky and the ground meet, but it's also the eye level line of the viewer, in this case, whoever was holding the camera. So that's how it works on this side. And things that get farther away from us are getting smaller, so the back wall looks smaller than that front wall. In the other direction, there's another vanishing point. That one's a little farther away, but it's the same set of rules. The lines go back until they hit the eye level line or the horizon line at that vanishing point. And they don't have to be connected to follow those rules. We learned that this is 3 different brick shapes. And the sides of the brick facing the street go back to that vanishing point. The ones facing the sunny side are going to that vanishing point. I'll continue to explain it as we sketch. And for now, that's the gist of it. There's a lot going on in this image, and so I'd like us to focus on the floating cube here and its partner behind. We might wind up ignoring the third one and just concentrating on what we have going here. Let's start with a square. Always a good shape to start with. Maybe about start in the middle of your sheet and go off to the right. I'm making a square about that big. Because if you'll notice, the bottom of this cube, this floating cube, is just about horizontal. So whoever took this photo was probably up, either from a car, on a little up on a hill, because the eye level is the bottom of the cube. The way the building is oriented, we're actually seeing the cube, we're seeing the building in perspective. And what that means is these parallel lines on the face of the building are going back to a vanishing point over that away. And the parallel lines on this side of the building are going to a vanishing point this way. And because they're so far away, I'm going to show us some other tricks that are really helpful when you're sketching on location. You're going to approximate what that angle is. You see that if we were looking straight on the building, you'd see that rectangle. But look what happens. It's sloping because it's in perspective. So approximate that angle. And we've got that side of the building. Now the bottom of this, as I'd said, is horizontal. If we erase it a little, it'll start to come, you'll start to see the shape. Let's do the other side. Make a rectangle over here. It's a skinny one. And then let's approximate what that slope is. So we have that little floating cube there, a rectangular prism to be exact. How about if we do the cube on top, and it's not really a cube, is it? But we're going to sketch it as if it's just another rectangular form, and we'll go up a little at the corner. We're going to go straight, and then we're going to start chipping away at this shape. Come all the way over to about 3/4 of the way over. Make another vertical line, and then it slopes like that. You can make it about parallel, but really it's going to be at a bit of an angle, more of an angle like that. All right, now let's take some of the shapes out. We're going to make a little, it's like a square perspective like that, and that approximates that overhang. Can you see it? And then over on this side, take a little bite out of that corner too. All right, if you'd like to add the back of that overhang. All right, why don't we stay on this face and add that concrete box on the ground. So coming down, we're going to make a line that's sloping. It's high on the right and sloping low on the left. So if this were our horizon line and our vanishing point is way off over there, things that are below our eye level are going to be dipping down like that. So let's get this concrete box in. We're going to come in from the corner a little, make a vertical line. Come in, you're about 1/3 of the way from the end. Make another vertical line like that. The gate actually extends past. There. So now we have our gate, our concrete, our floating brick cube. It's a little hard to see in this photo, but this is a rolling gate. Okay, so the bottom of the gate is along that same line. Make a vertical line. See how we have the edge of this floating rectangular prism? Make a vertical line just to the left of it. And that's our gate. Come down a little bit below the bottom of that brick box. And that's the gate. And you can see how it's, while they're angled, it's in perspective. Let's do some of this rectangular shape up top. So let's find our angle. If you have this angle for the top of the brick, that one's going to be a little steeper. Just send it off in that direction. All of these things are going back. You can't see your vanishing point, but they're all going back to a point somewhere off the screen. All right, go a little bit to the left of this edge, the left edge of the brick, and make a vertical line. And then that's the beginning of where this other brick pop out happens. So you see, if you extended that top of the brick over to our vertical line, make another line. So it's this right side of a rectangle. That's this box. You'll notice that they're not the same height. This guy's up a little higher, and that's where we've got him, about like that. And then this pale part of the building, just come past our brick a little bit and make a vertical there. I'm thinking that our sketch should be something like this, where we just see a little, make a line going out like that. Make another line going out like that. Because we don't want to have too much over here. We want to focus on this part of the building. So what we're going to do to this building, we're not going to sketch it at all. We are going to put in that profile line, and then we're going to completely ignore it. So we're making a vertical line here, which is the edge of that white wall. Notice it goes up. It's got a little finial up top. Now make a more or less horizontal line. It slopes back just a little. Come over to where you're about halfway through this back brick vertical and make a vertical line up a little. I'm about not quite halfway. I'm going to make a little step out like that. That's the eave, and I'm going to make a diagonal line as if that's the edge of the roof. And that's where that roof is sloping and where let's get just a little bit past this second smaller brick vertical shape. And that's it. That's the edge of our sketch. So make a straight line up. I'm going to go way up. I'm going to make us have like a big sky in this. Okay, that's our sketch area. That focuses our attention. Yeah, we see this stuff over here, but we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to sketch it. Let's focus on this. Can you see this floating rectangular prism? And this floating one here? There's a little line in between them. If you go find that little round ball, go up just a little and make a line that's the bottom of that form. See how there's like a cavity in there, and it's going to be slightly angled because it's going back to that vanishing point on the left, that one that we don't see. I'm just giving a little bit of hint of what's happening up on this balcony. It has an overhang, just a little. I'll make a couple lines like that. We're going to do the same thing, this one on the main part of the building. So it's got that overhang, a little bit of an overhang, and then it turns down. So that's like an inset. It's a door area. This looks like a balcony. And that serves as a little bit of an eyebrow for a little bit of shade at the door, and also that kind of a little eyebrow there is good from when it's raining, and it keeps some of the water off the door. So I'll finish some of these other ones. Just adding a little detail before we turn our attention back to the front of the building. We have it blocked out. The main shapes. Now we'll add a few more things. Let's start with the windows. Okay, so there's going to be a series of lines So the brick always has a horizontal grout line, joint line, where that's how they lay the brick. They'll do a whole course of brick and then add mortar and do another course of the brick. So there's always a horizontal series of horizontal lines. The ends of the bricks, the heads, they're staggered. And then the way that they've staggered them in different ways, if you'll remember what Javier said, this one's illustrating rain, and some others are like the Grecian or Mayan key pattern. That's pretty small detail. I don't know that we'll be able to get into that, but we know that if we follow those brick lines, they would comply with the rules of perspective. So if you wanted to make a series of lines back to your imaginary vanishing point, they radiate up like that. So I'm just going to make some angled lines to get started, a few light ones. And on this right side of this building over here, they're the same. They'd be following the same angles. So if you wanted to just to run these long, it's a good way to keep them consistent, and then go back and erase on the face of the buildings. So our brick joints are going to be like that. And even on that far one, this similar concept for this side, they're not as noticeable because there's so much sun hitting it, but the tops of the windows are all going to follow those rules. So now that I've got some guidelines in here, let's go in and start adding some of these windows. Looks like this tall, skinny one on the right lines up with the edge of that overhang. So I'm just going to make a skinny window there. I'm a little high. I'm going to bring it down a little. Okay, all right, so the top of the windows are lining up. Do you see that? And so that just space them the way you see it in the photo. Notice how we can see this inside of this opening. We see the top and the right side in there, but we don't see anything on the bottom or on the left. So add a couple extra lines on the top and on the right, and that shows that your glass area is actually recessed into that wall opening. Now we have a big window down here. Same thing, you can see the top and the right recessed, and then tops of these are about the same. There's that skinny window way closest to the corner. If you want to erase any of the lines, now's a good time. We could do the railing right now. And take it around the corner. All right, how about the windows on the left side of our floating shapes? So the tops of these windows on the right come to the corner, because look how they line up. That. So come to that corner and then head backwards. And in this, once they've turned the corner, you see extra lines on the left and at the top. I mean, we can really see, looks like these bricks are sort of pushed back. So if you want to make some skinny little rectangles along in those grout joints. And then this tall window here. I'm just filling in the windows where you see them, add them. Then there's this window near the bottom, a bit wider. And this reveal here. All right. I want to clean up that edge. And then we just keep working it. It's coming together pretty quickly. So we have this big window up here. And we're seeing its left side and top. There's some more of those little reveals. Reveal here. Add a little railing. Looks like there's another window, smaller window below the big one. You see the top, you see the left side. What's left? Looks like there's 3 windows here. I'm going to ignore that light pole. You can add it if you want to. I'm just going to ignore the stuff that's in there. Very skinny windows in here. These on that left face, they're going to follow the vanishing point off to the left. We've got it blocked out. Let's add a few other things. At the entry, you can see that concrete turns the corner. So it's going to follow the rules. It's going to follow the left vanishing point. But then where the door is, the door inset in there is parallel to this wall, so it goes to the other vanishing points. There's a little pattern in the Core-10 steel. They're vertical panels, so let's just add some vertical panels in there. And you'll see that in the concrete, that cast in place concrete, there are some horizontal lines. They're gonna follow the perspective. And there's some tiny little dots in it that tend to make it look like cast concrete. Let's add a line at an angle like this, which is the sidewalk. Maybe a couple other lines there. And there's this fence that continues out. I'm just going to make some little vertical lines in that fence. And how about some just squiggly lines for some shrubbery in the background? I'm just going to tone all that in. I'm going to stay in pencil on this one. We've got the details, we've got things blocked out. Let's start adding the tone and the texture. And the first thing I'd like to do is just shade these sides of the boxes that are in shadow, shade them a little. And the nice thing about pencil is that you can keep your hand soft, a loose grip on the pencil, and then just shade like that. We're going to have a lot more control over it. You can cover the whole thing. It's a lot more control doing the shade and shadow than if we were in pen. Because if you put in the shade and decide it's not dark enough, you can come back and add a little more. If you think it's too dark, you can use a kneaded eraser and pull some of the pencil lines off. I'm going to do everything with a light shade on it to start with, and then I'll come back and darken even more to give it the real 3D effect. But where I'm not putting any shade are the sides that are facing the sun, where the light is hitting it. And now this second brick shape. It's definitely darker back as that opening recedes back. And then that last little brick area gets a little shade. This whole area is pretty dark. So now let's start to build up. Let's do some of the materials. That brick is a really important feature here. On this wall, we want to hint that it is brick. And so what I do is with the side of the pencil, not with the point, I do it with the side, is I'm going to make a series of little dashes like this. And there's a randomness and not a randomness. So the way the brick is set, they alternate. But let's just give this a try. Just do a series of dashes, longs and shorts, following those lines you laid out. Because we're sketching this building because it's brick, because it's so interesting. So we might as well spend a little extra time getting that brick pattern in there. If you have the patience, keep doing what I'm doing. If you don't have that kind of patience, you can add the brick texture maybe around the corners, maybe leave the part in the middle undone, because your vignette, it's something called a vignette where you do some of it and then it fades out. If you wanted to, you see, remember where Javier talked about some of those other patterns where he turned the brick and was representing rainfall? Go ahead and do that in a couple of places. It really shows off what he was trying to do. And keep your little bricks, the brick lines short and random and broken like that. All right, you might have to come back in periodically and clean up those lines because the edges of those are pretty straight. Let's do the same in this area that's shaded. Then when you get to the sunny part, when we turn the corner, I think we want to hint it a little bit that it's also the brick pattern. And so just make shorter ones. You'd be able to tell that you've turned the corner because we don't have the shadow, but give that texture there. If you need to come back to this side and add a little more, go ahead and do so, just so that you see that it's really in shadow. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll darken it a little more near the corner. Make sure you come in and really darken those slots. They stand out. And then you can darken the edges of the windows and some diagonal lines in the glass. Even Javier talked about that. It shows that it's reflective. And then just keep working around your sketch and adding your shadows where they they fit. Don't forget to shade the underneath of this overhang in the back. If you'd like to put some pattern on the railing, it's sort of a 3 up, 3 down. Keep the pencils thin, light. I'm just adding a little more brick. See how I put a little extra brick there at the corner? A contrast. Now we're doing the shaded side. I'm making them a little longer. It helps to squint every now and then and see if it reads, see where you need your shadows. It's really dark in here, so you could give it a little more punch in the shadow areas. Getting lighter as you get out. And then if you wanted to come out back to the face of the building and darken the core tin, this is more of the material, not so much the material itself is dark. So we're just giving it a tone like that. I'm going to try to keep my line a little more vertical because there's a vertical pattern in that gate, in that metal wall. Now I want us to do a little something. The building itself is casting a shadow, and the shadow can really help us make the building stop floating. All right, so I have the edge of the sidewalk here, and you see there's the little curb. So we're going to be adding a series of vertical lines there, but let's do some diagonal lines across the sidewalk. They're going to follow the rules of perspective, so try to make them go back to your vanishing point, the one on the left, and bring them out like this. It adds a little sort of a dynamic effect, but it also says that this building is in shadow. This is the ground plane. Making that the edge. Now, working in pencil, it's quite easy to smear your pencils, as I've done there. Let's add some of the trees. If there's any area that you think would benefit from being a little darker before we add the trees, or at any point. There is a little shadow cast right here that I didn't add. Okay, how about the trees? I see a fence out here, a wall. I'm gonna leave that. When you've got your pencil and you're doing trees, you can turn your pencil sideways like this and make a series of lines. And that's a way to get the trees done a little faster. And so have it dark underneath where the shadow is. They get a little lighter as they go up. It's a whole lot faster. And then there's some more bushes on the ground. Again, squint, see if there's anything that you need to add or darken up, like the windows. Definitely the windows, I didn't do those up. That metal frame around them, much darker. Give it a little more darkness to the corner. so that it really reads. I'm going to give extra darkness to the door because it's way in the background. You know, there are those power lines, and it does tell us that this is an urban setting. If you want to go ahead and add the power lines, it makes it kind of, I don't know, realistic. You could add a little power pole in there, maybe a couple of birds. I don't want to overwork my little pencil sketch, so I'm going to stop. Let's add where we are. This is Trinidad Cacho in Tijuana.